In this section, we're going to talk about percent yield. This is where you compare the amount produced in the lab to that which should be theoretically produced by stoichiometric calculations. Here's a very simple example of percent yield. Imagine we had a theoretical yield because of stoichiometry, where we had 4 blue circles adding to 2 red squares, and they make them 2 molecules of each having 2 blue circles and 1 red square. You can see stoichiometrically everything should be used and it should be perfect. But in the actual part, or the observed part in the lab, we only produced one of those molecules. You see, we only produced 50% of what we should have produced theoretically. That would give us a 50% yield. In this example, we're going to go ahead and do the equation for sodium nitrate and potassium chromate. We're going to form some potassium nitrate and silver chromate. The question asked if we had 5 grams of silver nitrate with a molar mass of 170 grams per mole, and it's added to excess potassium chromate in the lab. Excess just means we have a lot of potassium chromate and we don't need to worry about it. If 4.55 grams of silver chromate is isolated in the lab, what's the percent yield for the reaction? Well, what we do is we start off with what we know. We have 5 grams of silver nitrate, and we are trying to find out how many grams of silver chromate we are supposed to theoretically make using the stoichiometry. So let's go ahead and do the math. Of course, what we do is we get those grams of silver nitrate into moles. So we do that by dividing by molar mass, and we find out there's 0.0294 moles of silver nitrate. Put that up there underneath the silver nitrate. And what we do next, of course, is we look at the stoichiometric ratio. Looks like there's 1 silver chromate for every 2 silver nitrates. So when I do that math, I find out that that ends up being about 0.0147 moles of silver chromate we should theoretically produce. Well, how are we going to get that into grams to compare to our observed amount we saw in the lab that was isolated? We go ahead and we take the moles of silver chromate, multiply it by its molar mass, which is 332 grams per mole, and we find out that we should have made 4.88 grams of silver chromate. That 4.88 grams that we find using stoichiometry is what we call our theoretical yield. So how do we find percent yield? Well, we take what we isolated in the lab, which was observed, and we divide it by the theoretical yield, like so. We get the observed 4.55, which was given to us in the problem. We divide it by the theoretical, which we found stoichiometrically, multiply by 100, and you get 93.2% yield, which means we've lost about 6.8% of our product somewhere in the process.